Hello, everyone. Welcome to the PC Perspective Podcast. We're recording episode 786 tonight. It's the 14th of August, 2024. I'm Sebastian Peak.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Josh Walrath.
I'm Brett Van Spurnberg, and I just don't feel like I got all the banter out. So
there's more banter to be had. Don't worry. The pre-show is going to spill over into the regular podcast.
All right, thank you. I'm a little uncomfortable right now. Okay.
And I'm the guy that got cut out of that, Kent Burgess.
Yes. Speaking of uncomfortable,
lucky dog,
I realized halfway through the banter just now, I'm like, oh, Kent never got to introduce himself. But it's fine. Because
that's what I get for missing last week.
That's true.
Through the magic of editing, none of that will get corrected at all. You know what? You can support what we're doing right now online, live to YouTube, Wednesdays at 10 p.m. YouTube.com/PCPer by going to Patreon. And that's another PCPer thing because we have a Patreon account and we'd like you to contribute to it. Patreon.com/PCPer and be like old Dane.
Old Dane.
Yeah. Patronizing old Dane.
Old Dane. I could go on. I really could. I just kind of like, yeah, I should stop though. Dane.
Yes, you should.
Stop while you're ahead. Actually, speaking of restraint and stopping while you're ahead, Josh, I'm sure
you said we wouldn't talk about the restraining order.
No, we're not. No, we're not talking about it. No. Forget that. Josh ate something and he showed great restraint, right?
After a couple of weeks, I actually had another burger. I had wings a week past, and then I didn't have one the week after, and yeah, it just finally got back to business. And this was the Plainsman, except I put two patties on it. Usually it's a single patty, but I wanted to make sure that I really didn't eat for another 24 hours. And I succeeded in this one. It was a little messy. But if you remember, the Plainsman is usually a smashed single patty, but in this case I had two. Pepper jack cheese, chipotle ketchup, fry sauce, hatch green chilies. That was nice, and jalapenos. So it's a very robust burger. Don't forget the bacon, chopped bacon on that too. You can see some in that bottom right corner. Yeah, it was a little messy when I got it out of the bag. And it seems like they're starting to do rosemary salt on the fries. So that gave it an extra little tang that I was not expecting. Not my favorite combination, but, if you like roasted red potatoes with rosemary, then yeah, I guess you'd like it. So yeah, that's the meal this week. It was very filling. And yeah, now I'm probably going to go purge or something.
It looks good.
Yeah, it was good. Very good.
Moving on to the PCPer news desk, and our top story this week has to be the Ryzen 9000 launch. Now, we talked last week about the Ryzen 5 and 7 9000 series processors. Well, now we have the 9900 and 9950X. So these flagship Zen 5 parts, which will only be the flagships until X3D parts launch at some point, are somewhat interesting. And some of the buzz around these, at least in reviewer circles in the last few days, has been that they're somewhat difficult to test. And you can get inconsistent benchmarks rather easily because I'm just going to say it right up front. These 9950X and 9900X parts have a lot more in common with the 7950X 3D than with the prior generation X parts. So to get these to work properly, you have to have the whole PPM provisioning driver thing working perfectly, which means, preferably a clean Windows install and then the proper Windows driver. You have to have Windows updated. You have to have the game bar. There's a command you have to put in to make sure everything's actually working properly, that the process is running correctly. There's core parking, even though there is not 3D V-cache with these. So It's interesting. I liked Gavin's take on this at Anontech. You can read up on this. and actually some interesting insights into the upcoming 800 series chipsets as well at the AT review. But I'm sure you guys have probably seen some early numbers out there that basically this is about 5% faster across the board. There are certain instances, especially AVX 512, where you can get a lot more. It's better in Linux. If you looked at the Linux reviews out there, why am I forgetting the name of the outlet? Who does the really good Phoronix? Yeah, they showed like 17 point something % uplift versus previous generation. So, and of course, with Linux, you don't have the whole Windows, Xbox Game Bar core.
How do you install the Xbox bar on Linux?
I don't know. I've never figured it out.
That must be hard.
In Linux. So, if you just look at gaming benchmarks at places like TechSpot, where they did testing, they're conventional testing, lots of different games. And here, of course, I'm looking actually at CPU benchmarks. It is a little bit faster. The 9950X is a little bit faster than the 7950X. And it really depends on the workload. But wherever the gaming is, it's actually slower in the memory for some reason. Yeah. I don't know how much of this, it's so early. We've already had 2 AGESA microcode updates since people received samples. Very late into the testing process, outlets like TechSpot, Gamers Nexus were informed, you've got to treat this like the X3D part. And so people had to throw out days worth of work and start over again. I was watching Steve's video.
Yeah, he threw out 5 days worth of work.
Aren't you glad it was late now?
But look, it gave you results like this. Sorry, Brett.
Yeah, I wanted to just point out that you could see results on like the zip test up above, that when the code base fits entirely or almost entirely in the 3D Vcache, it runs very, very fast. Or not the 3D Vcache. Well, actually, yes, essentially 3D Vcache, that 9900X 3D was top of the charts, I'm pretty sure. So clearly, Cinebench doesn't all fit. They made sure that is the case. It's not the same. It's a little bit different. That's why you're seeing the regular X, the new X part, come out on top with so many more cores. But it depends on your workload.
Speaking of workloads, look at this. With a 4090, 1080 Ultra, which is still, it's questionable to do Ultra testing for CPU scaling, but the Ryzen 9 9950X and 7950X produce exactly the same results. Average
Shocking.
1% lows. It's going to depend on the game. I think the reviewer's guide said to use Cyberpunk as what they called a sanity check to make sure you were hitting, and I think AMD said a 4090 should be like 210 frames per second at their whatever the recommended settings were with the 9950X.
720i.
Yeah, it's just it's very, very similar performance to the 7950X, but it uses a lot less power. I got excited about the efficiency and the power, like the thermals, but it's not that exciting. And I saw somebody, I think it was on Gamers Nexus, had made the comment, Zen 5%, and I thought that was funny. But anyway, any other thoughts on this launch?
What the heck's going on with inter CCD communication?
Yeah.
You think that's where it's slowing down?
Is significantly higher in between, and that's why you have to use core parking, because they want you to run on the same CCD and not jumping back and forth from them.
Yeah, there was a section of that in the AnonTech review too, the core-to-core latency. Zen 5 gets weird, they say.
That's been the overall theme of all the reviews I've watched since the last week's is just the inconsistency in the results that people are getting and what they, AMD told them they would be getting. But then these, as you said, Steve had to throw out 5 days of work. Hardware Unboxed said that they had to throw out several days of work. DeBauer did a pretty long video where he talked about the inconsistency of his results. He said, he would do 10 runs, and the first 9 would be really bad, and then one of them would be about where they thought it should be. But he can't just report on that. He's got to report on the others as well. And he also did testing where he had the PBO turned off and turned on. And the power draw with the PBO turned on was exceptionally high. 300 watts on the 9950X in certain situations. It sounds a little familiar. But, I think AMD's problem with this was that the last gen, the 7000 series, were too good. And this almost feels like a back in the Intel Sandy Bridge, Ivy Bridge, Haswell days, where it's like Sandy Bridge was so good, and then it's like, well, all we can really do is improve the performance a little bit and then make it a little more efficient. And of course, they were resting on their laurels at the time because AMD had no competition. But yeah, it seems like this is just a marginal move forward. And a lot of people are very disappointed because they were expecting more. But I'm sort of reminded of the 13900, 14900 in a way.
Yeah.
Not the instability issues, but the performance uplift, which was very little.
This, to me, feels very much like a mobile-focused architectural change. At 4 nanometer, it's extremely efficient. They can do things with a lot less power, and it's not exciting to see marginal improvements in performance, but look at this. Like, I was running the Blender benchmark tool version 4.2, and I got, you're going to get better results with the 9950X, but the package power seems to be capped at exactly 200 watts. I was getting a flat 200, and if you look at the 7950X, that was hitting 235 in the same test. So, and what's interesting to me, how do you get there? Well, the core clocks are lower. So this architecture is actually more efficient because I was not seeing the same sustained core clocks with this part either. I think because it's power limited, unless you start going into like PBO and actually adjusting things, but completely stock, at least with the microcode I'm running, the Aegisa code, the Windows install I had going. And I've got to retest this. I've got to do a clean install so I can go through all of the steps, because not only do you need a clean install, but then you also have to go in and make sure game mode is turned on, game bar is turned on. You need to have fully updated Windows install. You have balanced power profile. I had high performance enabled. Okay.
Well,
so obviously I didn't do every step correctly. So I don't trust my own results. So it's like, yeah, it's interesting to look at how much more efficient it is, but I don't think people have really seen the very best out of this, especially in gaming, if core parking was not working properly for all the reviewers out there.
So Zen 5 is a really forward-looking architecture. I mean, the addition to usable AVX 512, things they've done on the front end, the 8-wide decode dispatch. I mean, they're all pretty good things. And I mean, just, the thousands of micro architectural tweaks that they're doing. And, I think that their design is good, but we're going to just see Aegisa code after Aegisa code after Aegisa code being dropped. And we still have the 800 series chipsets coming out. And so they're going to be doing a lot of work at the low end. And eventually, hopefully, they get Microsoft kind of rankled in there to fix some things in Windows. Haha. But it is much, much more efficient. And I think those X3D parts are, probably going to be nice. And by the time they hit, hopefully we'll have some really solid, Aegisa low-level work that maybe can address some of these intercore communications, because, latency from the I/O die is just in the Infinity Fabric. I mean, it should be going faster, but it's not. And I'm also curious to see how much of a difference, using the 6400 MT memory is going to be, because that will, of course, increase the fabric clock speed Yeah, it seems like they really tried to get this out as soon as they can. I mean, the silicon is good. It's just everything around it needs seemingly a whole lot of work. Because remember when the original Bulldozer came out, it was kind of a mess, obviously, but they didn't have time to really tighten a lot of things down. And they fixed a lot of things in PileDriver and made it, a little bit more reasonable. Still wasn't great. Still wasn't incredibly competitive, but it was better. And I'm wondering if we may not see kind of some updated stuff in about 8-9 months, which will actually have some slightly different silicon spins going on. I mean, that maybe seems a little faster than I would expect, but I don't know. It really is a new architecture. I mean, it's kind of iterative from previous, but it's still very new. They add a lot of features, a lot of things that really help the throughput of and execution of workloads. And as Sebastian saw, average clock speeds are down, but performance is still up. So, I mean, it is a jump, but I think they just have so much work to do in terms of
the tiebreaker.
All of that.
It ends up being the price performance ratio. I mean, at $650, I think 9950X over the 7800X 3D or 7900X 3D, it doesn't make sense depending on your workload.
One thing that's, I think, interesting to consider is that with Zen 4, some of the performance uplift from Zen 3 was moving to higher bandwidth memory with DDR5.
Yes.
And since we're on the same memory system now, here's an interesting thing from the reviewer's guide. I don't know if you're supposed to show this, but here we go. Number 6 here on the list, memory. Some processors may be able to achieve Expo 6400, at 1-to-1 with manual settings. By default, a GSIB will set any memory profile above 6000 to 1.2, but an end user may override this to 1.1. Stability of this configuration will vary based on the specific processor, and they go into it, but essentially the recommendation is still 6000 and go low latency with it. Because you're not just going to get any Zen 5 processors, get the 6400 kits that are going to be popping up everywhere, and think that you're going to run 1-to-1, because not every processor will be able to do it, is what they're cautioning. I tested at 6000. Not that I'm going to keep any of those results anyway, but I have a 6400 kit, but it wants to run at 1.4 volts. So I don't want to do that.
No, because that's one of the biggest things about this processor is it won't electrocute itself. Although if you ran with that, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's just not quite there yet. Why are we reviewing these processors when we don't even have the new chipset motherboards yet? They're saying September. September is what I think the board partner I talked to was saying. So if we're getting a new chipset, which according to the non-tech, I haven't gone too far into it, but Gavin said that it's still the same as media chip. It's just the feature set has changed. Like the minimums are different. They're all going to have USB 4. They all have to have a minimum of a PCIe 5 slot and this and that. But essentially the chipset is the same. Just as the I/O die in Zen 5 parts is the same as Zen 4. Which is interesting. Maybe this is why the core parking... He has multiple theories about that too. That was an interesting read at Non-Tech. But anyway... Any further thoughts on this, or shall we move on to some
maybe
stuff?
It was just they saw how many issues Intel was having, and they would strike when the iron was hot.
Yeah.
And so they pushed everything up a month or two to try to get this out, and it just has fallen apart because engineering couldn't keep up with what marketing and executives wanted to do. I don't know. I haven't heard anything, concrete on that, but looking at the situation, it looks like they wanted to hit back to school with these parts, with Intel struggling and all that bad negative press. And it just doesn't seem to, they just didn't seem to have all their horses in line.
AMD never fails to capitalize on an opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the product works. It's just frustrating that I personally don't want anything to do with core parking. I find it extremely frustrating to get it working properly because, I mean, maybe a more organized and intelligent person would have no issues with it at all. But anyway, Josh, doesn't this remind you a little bit, I know it's different circumstances, of the original Athlon launch where you had the CPUs launching, but there weren't any boards? I guess.
I mean, there were, but there were like 3 boards and 2 chipsets. ALI had the Aladdin 5, I think, and that was pretty close to launch. Except again, they had some firmware issues and some low level issues that was kind of a frowned upon board. And then they had the K7M. Yeah, which was what PCPer.com originally came from.
Yeah,
right.
And then the FIC SD11. They were the 3 major motherboards that were out, and out of all of them, I think the SD11 was the most common, and it was a funky looking motherboard for the time. It almost looked like an engineering sample. The I/O ports were kind of screwed up, and the size of the board was massive. And I remember Sharky got a pre-production version, and the performance was horrible. And so, I mean, they had it was like 2 months before it launched, and they had someone snuck them a board and a CPU, and I mean the results were terrible. And but then 2 months later they released it with these boards, and they were good enough, and they were it was smoking the Pentium 3. But yeah, a little bit like that. I mean, eventually support gets better, and AMD is in a far better place now than they were with the original Athlon. But that was the CPU put them really on the. I mean, K6 was good, but the K7 was the first time they could prove that they could compete with Intel.
Yes. Let's move to a video card related story, and it's from videocards.com, of course, the authority on video card related news. AMD partners shift focus to RDNA 4. It says no sign of RX 7400, 7300 models for now. I guess there had been rumors about those kind of filling out the product stack with lower cost GPUs, but now supposedly that's not going to happen after leaks to the contrary from reliable sources. PCIe device IDs, that sort of thing. Now it's just, according to board partners, allegedly. This might just
they're not getting any designs.
Yeah,
they're not getting the designs for the commercial side. Maybe it's going to be for OEMs, but with the lack, with some of the retirement and some of the not that they don't work anymore, but driver support is disappearing for some of the more affordable and some of the older GPUs that have been around a long time. So this would have been a nice place, as you said, to fill out the lower end of the product stack. It doesn't look like it's happening. It looks like the board partners are moving more towards RDNA 4 than they are low-end RDNA 3. Fact of life, I guess. AMD snatching victory from the
jaws of defeat.
Except
they weren't.
Maybe
it's the other way around.
Yeah,
the other way around.
Just like Intel gave AMD an opening to take some more desktop market share, maybe AMD's giving Intel a little bit of room here with Battlemage. Another story from Video Cards. Intel Battlemage GPU spotted 19 gigabit per second memory, 12 gigabytes VRAM.
Rip off. That's not enough RAM.
On a 192-bit bus.
Yeah.
456 gigabytes per second of bandwidth in that configuration.
So I guess there's going to be 3 configurations, right?
I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah, I don't think it's all been decided yet, but let's look at this list here, this chart. So Battlemage, what they're guessing here is 14 XE2 cores. So these are lower end parts. This is not the replace. No, wait, let's see. The top end.
Well, the top end.
770, 32 XE2 cores.
Wait, isn't that a motherboard?
Yes. No. Yeah, probably. H770 V7. Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of liking this, the idea of 16 gigabytes at 19 gigabit per second, 256 bit.
And 256 bit wide. That's smart.
Yeah. This could be a very solid mid-range kind of offering from Intel. And if the price is right, that's what we need. We need something like $300 with really great performance.
I think it would be a little more than that, but I hope not.
Probably, yeah, with 16 gigs.
Oh, it's going to be a $500 card, initially. Ouch. But it will be, I think it's going to be fairly competitive from what, we're starting to hear. They've changed the architecture, obviously, from Alchemist. And I can't remember what the big one is, like, vector size increased from 4 to 8 or 8 to 16 or width. And because they had to do some things in their driver and software to and the real-time compilers to get a lot of these workloads to run really effectively on their GPU, which AMD and NVIDIA kind of already had going on. And so that one change makes the software side a whole lot easier. And again, they've invested a tremendous amount of money in software with Alchemist, and that will carry over into Battlemage. So yeah, I mean, it probably will be a 4070 competitor, and if they can undercut it, then people will buy because they're not in the same boat as they were when the A770 launched, and the software and drivers were absolute garbage.
Yeah. But hey, after those drivers mature on Battlemage a bit, it's going to get better and better and better.
Yeah,
if it was like Alchemist.
We'll take time to report on every one of those.
Yes. Josh, that's your new job.
Okay.
Battlemage analyst, Josh Waller.
Well, you're the one that bought the Alchemist, so.
Yep.
Whenever I hear from Intel about this, I'm going to give him Josh's name. Like, Josh, he's been talking about Battlemage for
nonstop.
Years.
Ever.
And I was the one who was negative, like, it's never going to be released. So why would I have the privilege of reviewing it? It's got to be Josh. All right. Our next story, speaking of Intel, as a moth flies around my head, Intel's Raptor Lake. Now, you may have heard about the microcode updates that are out there, and of course, I was so excited to know that there's some new BIOS to update all my systems to. 0x129, that's that magic microcode update that's been pushed out over the last week or so. Jeremy had this story here, which nothing can be easy. Nothing in this hobby or in life is ever easy. So you update to the latest microcode, which is supposed to cut off access to anything above 1.55 volts and save your CPU from dying. But it doesn't always work. So now you're still having to tweak manually? Is that what you're saying,
yes,
Jeremy?
there is this one secret setting that you need to turn on. Otherwise, and to be fair, this is a single sample size where a Z790 Aorus Maxter X was going up to 1.5792 after the patch was applied. And when it was looked into, lo and behold, it turns out that on the motherboard, after the BIOS update, you need to make sure that you're running on Intel default settings under power management. So if you've changed that from default to anything other than that, the microcode doesn't actually put a ceiling on the voltage, which is like insanity. I don't understand.
On this board from this manufacturer.
So. Yes, from this gigabyte board. So we'll see as more people install it how true this is. But literally, you'd expect that to be a brand new, it's defaulted back to it. And if you're going to change it, it gives you this big warning. Please be aware you may destroy your CPU if you do this. I don't think they're going to be doing that. And that's kind of dumb. You should really be putting big glaring warnings that, your Raptor Lake is still in danger of exploding. But carry on if you want. They also assure you that overclocking is still a thing. This is not reducing your ability to overclock at all. But it will, prevent your CPU from exploding, or at least letting the magic smoke out, unless you specifically want it to, or you forget to turn your power limit back to Intel default settings.
overclocking should still be a thing, like it always was, because the board stock, you put the CPU in, it runs at the precise voltage indicated on the chip. And to overclock, you simply move some pins around or some jumpers around on the board.
Yeah.
And that's how you do it. And that's the way it should still be. Forget this software malarkey and using a mouse.
Are you saying it's too easy?
BIOS.
It's too easy?
No,
It's too
it
easy
should be
for
very
people?
difficult and intentional
Yes.
to overclock your CPU. That's what I'm saying.
I
You
know
still need a
Intel.
pair of tweezers.
Yeah.
Make the MTech R581A great again.
Okay, that might be going a bit too far.
What,
They
you
could
don't
run
want to
83
set jumpers for IRQs again? Is that what you're saying?
No,
Yeah.
I
not
like doing that. When you can set the jumper on your sound card, you don't have to worry about software configuration stuff. It's like, look, it's IRQ5, and that's what it's set to with
PCIe
a
3.
jumper.
Yep.
Exactly. Hold IO forever.
Yeah.
DMA1 or
DMA?
IRQ5.
Heretic.
What do you mean? I'm talking like just straight up standard ISA Sound Blaster 16 setup stuff.
Yeah, you want to go back to master and slave era, don't you?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. SCSI termination.
Yep. Oh,
Little resistor
geez.
jumper pack.
why are all my drives not working? You see that one at the end there? Well, you don't have
Yeah.
one to put in there. You're going to want to. That's
Get a
really
little resistor
important.
pack on that one.
Or even just that.
Actually, this particular chain only works with the resistor in the middle.
All right, for this next story, I put this in just because, I've been very down on AI. If you haven't listened to the podcast, or if you even care to remember my take on this, AI devices specifically, because there's two different categories, and I think Josh would agree. There's machine learning, which isn't going anywhere, and it's very important and valuable. And then there's AI as a buzzword for consumer stuff, which is mostly trash. And so the Humane AI pin, which was, I think, $600 or $700 plus 20 something a month for the service.
Yes. Yeah. And a phone
24.
number. So,
Yeah.
Yep.
You had to have a
was
new
$24.
phone number. It didn't even work with
Yeah,
your
yeah, yeah.
phone.
right.
They
Yep.
are, according to The Verge, they are being returned at a faster rate than they were sold. I'm guessing a lot of these were just given out to reviewers and had to come back. I don't know.
I'm sure.
The AI gadget released in April to abysmal reviews, and Humane is now reportedly dealing with over $1 million worth of returned product. And at some point soon, they're going to have to shut down the service, which I think that was the one that was just tapping into OpenAI. Because in the Rabbit R1 is literally just an Android app. And then you've got, I think it's Bring Us, a hilarious YouTube channel. He does like crazy stuff with weird hardware, but he literally just did a clean install of Android on the Rabbit R1 and just proved this is just a phone. It's a really crappy phone.
And it's got a really lousy interface, a really ugly casing on it, and literally there's nothing to like about it.
And now it's going to be e-waste unless somebody can figure out a fun way to hack it and turn it into like a cheap
A Tamagotchi?
handheld Game Boy type thing. Yeah.
Send them all
They
to
couldn't
what,
disassociate
Defcon,
them.
and they'll do something with it.
According to the article, they couldn't disassociate them from the carrier. They were like number
Oh, so
locked
now
or
they're just
something.
straight up trash. Are you kidding?
Yes, they are putting them all aside,
Oh.
hoping that they can figure out a way to get out of this. But right now, all the return ones, and it's thousands and thousands of them, are number locked to the carrier.
So there's no eSIM or anything. It's just, no, this was your phone number, period.
yes, they
Yeah,
blasted
and it's
in there
locked to
one
your
time.
carrier.
Wow.
But do you really want to spend effort jailbreaking one of these things?
Jesus, I don't know.
Because they're garbage.
Just think, someone actually invested in all this. Invested
To
a
the
lot
tune
of
of
money.
millions and millions of dollars. You want to know why? It was two ex-Apple employees that started this company, and then they tried
Oh,
to
was
shop
it?
the thing to HP after they launched this in the
Not
first month.
surprised. But
They
hey,
tried to
quick
get HP to
question.
buy them.
Can you name a single venture capitalist that's got into AI and made money back?
I could say venture
There aren't
capitalist. I was going to say Elon. I was going to say Elon.
No. But even still, it's not really AI. But no, they're losing money faster than they can spend it. But because the bubble hasn't technically burst yet, we're going to be seeing so much more as they're doing the last gasp.
Remember, Elon was with OpenAI, and he's doing his own thing.
Oh,
now.
he's mad at them again.
I know.
He's suing them again. Yes.
because
Yes,
they're
again.
doing it wrong. No,
By the
They
way,
broke a promise they never made to him.
since I brought it up, just shameless plug of nothing to do with this channel, but go to YouTube and look up Bring Us Studios. Bring Us.
Oh, this
all
is the
one
guy
word.
that
He's hilarious. So like here he is trying to make the in real life the office computer from Counter-Strike Source. Just weird stuff. Like here he is showing you. Like he has a whole video on the Rabbit R1. He does some interesting things. My favorite video of his is making a covert gaming system where it's all inside of this really, bulky looking sweatshirt, and he's using 3D like VR glasses as the monitor. He has a Nintendo Switch strapped to his belly. Like
to be able to play pocket pool.
yeah, he's literally like, no one knows I'm gaming right now. And he's just like standing next to a kid's playground. He's like, his hands are moving around inside of his pocket.
Why are you arresting me?
It's good. So anyway, where were we? What were we talking about?
moving on from the humane pin.
Oh no. Okay, so be careful when you're out there looking for a deal on a GPU, because in the coming months, you might see a 4070. It's just like, why? This is so affordable. I love it. Until you realize it has GDDR6 in it.
It
So
knocks a bit of the edge off the original.
A little bit
4070.
less bandwidth. So the regular 4070 has GDDR6X, which gives you effective 21 gigabit per second memory clock and 504 gigabytes per second of total bandwidth, and it goes down to 480 bandwidth with 20 gigabit per second GDDR6. That's it. It's not a huge deal, and if you're paying, say, $100 less, I'm just being hopeful here, then that's probably more than good enough. But this might be destined for OEMs or something.
They did also change the GPU core ID as well.
Yeah.
I assume it's exactly the same, obviously.
They'll be like die harvested 4080s and lower.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah, who knows?
Different memory addresser, and that's about it, probably.
Binned out of the high-end card. Yeah.
All right. Well, anyway, that was the news for this week. And it was in a very reasonable amount of time. Last week, you couldn't tell necessarily because of how it was edited. I had to throw in an ad at like the 31-minute mark. But it was over an hour just to get through news last week. And here we are. We've been recording for 39 minutes, and we're going to get into In Security Corner. Story number 1 from Tom's Hardware. Now, actually, there's 2 stories, and I don't have to start with this one, but there's this whole AMD flaw that's kind of a big deal. We didn't talk about it at the top. It affects all AMD CPUs for a number of generations. I don't know exactly how far back this goes.
Back to 2006, actually.
Oh, wow. And they've already started addressing this. There was new AGESA microcode even after I started retesting stuff before this review cycle. So it went from AGESA 1.2.0.0.A to 0.1. And unfortunately, they're not going back to the beginning. They're not patching everything. So if you have a Ryzen 3000, they're not being patched. Now, the latest ones are not included on this list either, so I wonder if that's just if they've been mitigated already. Yeah, it says they're surmising that the newly released models might have this vulnerability already addressed from the factory. They're following up. I don't think there's been an update to the story yet, but pretty big security flaw here. But who can tell me about sync close? What is this?
Jeremy, want to take this one?
Well, it's the bastard child of one that we already knew about from a little while back, and a brand new issue that we've got. So essentially what it is that just about every EPYC chip on the planet, which is the real problem, I mean, your mobile stuff and your desktop stuff, it's a little bit of a problem, but not as big as having this on Epic. And it leverages T-close, which is the way that you are able to fall back into system management mode, where your OS is toast. So you're trying to get the UEFI to, start the system up. You need it to talk to TPM. You need it for USB legacy support. It's the stuff, and it shuts down your computer when your chip starts to overheat. Well, unless it's a Raptor, but so it's very, very basic. And the problem is that this is going to be yet another one of those things we hate to see, a boot kit. What they've managed to do is, if they've already gotten access to your system and they're running stuff on the kernel, I mean, I'd like to say, hey, it's not very often that someone's got a hack that goes in and takes over the OS kernel, except I read about 3 new ones every day, it seems like, for the past couple of years. So if they've managed to get it, what they can then do with Sinkhole is trick the system into triggering SSM or SMM and writing to the chip on the motherboard. So at that point, there ain't nothing you can do short of pulling out hardware and reprogramming that flash chip from scratch, or at least removing the code, other than tossing out that motherboard and replacing it with something else. And this is, as I say, a huge issue for the Epic people, because it's not easy to just, we'll just throw out that server motherboard and replace it with a new one. That will be both cheap and quick and not require any downtime or hard work at all. So they're already pulling out patches, essentially, except for some mobile stuff. The patches are already pushed out and you can apply them, so you won't be able to be affected by this anymore. But trying to get that patch and then apply it to production machines and getting things going is, not super easy to do. It's just, every time I see one of these boot kits, it's so frustrating, because it means you can scrub your system all you want. You can flash your BIOS as much as you want. It's not going to go away. It's going to be there every time you start up, and it's there.
They need physical access to your machine, though, right?
No, they just need kernel access.
So, and an exploit that they can get allows them to essentially jump their way into this more permanently embedded exploitation mechanism. The reason this is going to slow roll is because of a lot of the Epic systems, as Jeremy was talking about, are used in the server space or an enterprise, and the downtime isn't easy to find in those high availability use cases. These are running, governments and institutions, hospitals, power distribution, water, all kinds of need all the time facilities, need 24/7 facilities. So it's going to be slow rolled, in my opinion, that this particular patch. So there's going to be a lot of vulnerable systems for an unfortunately long period of time that people may inadvertently think, oh, I've applied the patch, I'm good, without knowing that maybe they had another exploit that was in there already. So this is now in there permanently. I don't believe that applying the patch after this has been exploited actually fixes the problem. Similar issue going on with Intel and their microcode in a way, but I don't believe that this fixes it. Once you've been exploited, you essentially have the exploit written in your EEPROMs, and barring replacing it to chip, flashing in new, like physical, grab the pins, and putting on new firmware, you can't get out of this one. This one's going to be with us for a while, I think.
No. And you're not going to know. It's never going to show up on a virus scan, because the virus scanners are not checking your flash memory on your EEPROMs on the board. And if it's done well, it's just going to sit there very quietly until that one day. I really hate boot kits so much.
They sound really effective, at least.
They are.
Difficult to get at and very effective if you can execute them.
But like Josh mentioned, for the longest time, a lot of these required physical access to the system.
Yeah.
It's evolved to the point where now once you've got a good breach on that system, you can start doing this remotely. And
Hey, Windows Update will update your BIOS for you. So, I mean, there's
yeah, I know.
Thanks.
things have changed.
Thank you.
But thankfully, once you do get booted up, as long as you are running Windows, that's where you're really going to be safe online. Right, Jeremy? Because Windows is the only OS that's safe from an 18-year-old browser vulnerability. This is story number 2 via Bleeping Computer.
Yeah.
How are they safe?
Because unlike Apple and Linux, they just didn't believe that 0.0.0.0 was an issue.
Otherwise known
Whereas
as
Microsoft-
they broke IP resolution.
Yeah. Yes. They didn't break it. They fixed it. The rest of them left it broken. Because you should not be able to send an HTTP request to that address with adding a service onto it. Right? So you're making a call to a normal web browser with an API call to it and launching a program. Well, in this case, what they're doing is you click on a link which references that address and an API that's running on your local machine, and boom, they are now able to make that process do whatever the heck they want. And the best thing is we knew about this for forever. It's just that they have never bothered to fix it. And someone was mentioning, like, Chromium wasn't mentioned as a OS. Well, Chrome is vulnerable to it. So, yeah, I think we can assume. So it's just laziness. Pure and utter laziness. As to
I think
why
Sebastian
you would not...
will appreciate the part of your article that speaks to the easy targeting of AI processes running on a local machine, I think.
Well, yes, Sebastian, you will be happy to know that is one of the best targets for this. Because that is usually a web-based API that you're running locally. And so now you totally don't have a way to ruin LLM makers' lives. This is not the way to do that. That would be, inconceivable.
Yeah, don't do this because it works perfectly.
No, totally not. And it works great. And as I say, 18 years later, they still haven't bothered to patch it. So,
I'm confused because, Jeremy, the next story on this list is talking about how Windows has weaknesses. Windows Smart Screen and Smart App Control both have weaknesses of which to be wary. What is this bad app bypass?
Sure do. Well, because Windows used to put the mark of the web on shortcut files, on web URLs. And the funny thing is that it's really good at, stopping some really weird URLs from running. But the thing is, if you just screw with a link of the LNK, the shortcut thing, and add in a random character somewhere to an executable path, Windows Explorer goes, hey, that someone screwed up that link, so we're just going to remove that extra period or the extra slash so that it's going to resolve to the shortcut that they tried to do, which completely and utterly removes the mark of the web from it. So you've now clicked on an attachment or a website that has a malformed slightly, but it's literally, format C : and you click on it, and Windows should be saying, oh, this is a link from the web. You should not be doing this. We're not going to run it. Oh, but it's malformed. So I'm going to help out, and I'm going to get rid of that dot. And by the way, now I totally and completely trust it.
I like the example here. It's like, it's target.exe dot. Oh, that last dot, that's wrong. Take that out, and then run the executable. Yes.
Fixed it for you.
Because now we can trust it because I fixed it. So I know
I'm such a good OS, aren't I?
Thanks, Microsoft.
Right.
Fortunately, Copilot will just do it for you, I'm sure.
That's an example of an externalized exploit. And by that, I mean, like, something it's kind of in your face. It's a misnamed file extension, exe.exe. If you read between the lines, it will also fix internal problems, but those are a little bit more hard to discover.
Yeah.
And those are formatting issues within the LNK file or within the structure of the mark of the web file. They're going after LNKs, but I suspect that this will transfer to other types of files as well.
Yes, anything that that Windows is happily auto-correcting for you.
Yeah, and it'll auto-correct internals as well as naming problems.
And as we all know, autocorrect makes everything better.
Such a good operating system. You're so good.
Yeah, duck you.
Hey, they're just trying to make it easier to run in nefarious programs on your system without your knowledge.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Okay, let's move on to gaming quick hits. And our first story comes from IGN. Valve confirms it will add SteamOS support to the Asus ROG Ally.
I think yay. I think good.
Yeah, I mean, it's good.
Yeah.
SteamOS
Feels
was
good.
supposed to be this thing. You could build your own Steam box and run that on there for free. So why not do it on these handhelds?
I don't know. I'm waiting to understand whether this is bringing balance to the force or whether they've joined them. I don't know which yet. I don't know.
Oh, Valve will just absorb them.
Okay.
Valve is going to absorb Asus? Okay.
No, just this one particular, the mobile gaming part of Asus.
Oh, I see.
The article actually...
Hey, you know what?
Asus likes to acquire things. Like they acquired the Nook thing from Intel, right? So...
Oh, so they're going to acquire the Steam Deck. Yeah, I don't see them doing that.
That it's not just the Ally. Is that Steam OS is perhaps coming to other capable handhelds as well, or maybe not just handhelds.
Yeah,
people have sort of been backloading it using Bazite onto devices like the ROG Ally, even onto PCs. And really, they're having decent luck as long as you're using AMD graphics.
Yeah, there's a lot of platforms out there that are AMD APU based. Okay, moving on to the next story. Next, Outer Worlds 2 is still a thing?
The reveal trailer dropped roughly 3 years ago.
Oh.
Since then, we have heard not a sausage. Until today, when Obsidian's head decided to say that, hey, you know what? Everything's going great. It looks gorgeous in Unreal Engine 5, and we're totally on top of it. We survived the Xbox gaming cull, which was good because when Microsoft bought them and then spun out the Xbox gaming, and then Xbox gaming just like destroyed so many companies. Like they just fired people left, right, center, and then more. But they managed to survive. They've been focusing on Pillars of Eternity, which they actually managed to do. Avowed, which might be out next year-ish. So there's a good chance that they're not going to miss the next year-ish for Outer Worlds 2, which they announced 4 years ago. But it hasn't died, and if you did enjoy the game, well, there will be a new one supposedly coming.
Why is it that the games seem like their work anymore? I tried to do the Outer Worlds, and I played like 20 minutes, and I've heard it's fun, but I just...
No, it's actually not that great. It was a bit of a grind. There were some entertaining parts to it. Because I gave it up, and then when they released the... What do they call it? The Astronaut Edition, or they named their Enhanced Edition something odd. So I tried it then, and I was in a mood where it worked. Like I want to turn my brain off and do repetitive things for a bit.
Well, it was free on Epic Games there for a while, so
yeah, I think that might have been what it was.
Yeah,
but yeah, we'll see if they do a better job on the second one because Obsidian's changed over the years from there's a little bit of a grind, but a lot of entertainment to there's a lot of grind to get a little bit of entertainment.
Let us move already, believe it or not. It's almost unprecedented. To picks of the week. Josh, please get us started.
It seems like it's about high time to start moving to AM5 if you haven't. I mean, yeah, if you got a 5800X 3D, just keep it. But if you got a 3000 series, there's some reasonable reasons to upgrade. Namely, if the price of the 7800X 3D goes back down again to the 320 mark, which would be awesome. But I've had really good luck with Gigabyte motherboards. I'm running on one now. I've done a bunch for work. Been relatively few problems as compared to the video cards, which I've had lots of problems and terrible RMA experiences with. But their motherboards seem to be pretty good. And so this is a B650 for $150, and it's pretty well apportioned. It doesn't look horrendous. It's got reasonable power, circuitry, couple of, I think it's got one PCIe 5.0 M.2, as well as a couple other spare M.2s that are running at 4.0. So it's a solid all-around board for not a huge amount of scratch. Somebody like the graphics, some people won't, but mine's in a case and I don't have RGB, and so slap it in there, enjoy.
Hey, it looks pretty reasonable, Josh. Kind of mostly understated.
Hey, thanks.
Yeah. It's a $150 motherboard. It's
pretty good for these days.
Yeah, it felt like that was never going to happen when AM5 launched, and of course it did. And DDR5 is much cheaper now, and everything's fine. All right, Jeremy, your pick this week.
I know nothing. Mm-hmm. No, Humble released this just after I posted the gaming news for the week.
Oh.
And it's literally all the good Beamdog and Owlcat RPG games. So if you want the old Pathfinder Kingmaker everything, or Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous everything, Neverwinter Nights complete, the Baldur's Gate and Baldur's Gate 2 remakes, the Icewind Dale remake, Planescape remake, and relatively new is Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader for a very bloody reasonable price if you don't have them or know someone that doesn't, because these are all amazing games. Well, except as I'm chatting with someone on the YouTube, Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous, at the end of it, it becomes like, if you're a min-max power gamer, you will have fun. For me, it was like, okay, I just point at this biggest, nastiest boss enemy and he drops dead, and now he's on my side as a unkillable zombie ghost thing that can still use his special powers. And then for my next turn, I'll just do an insta-kill on the rest of you, and then I'll get upset because the big super boss that I just made my slave is actually too big to fit through a narrow passage, so I have to let him die and do the same thing in the next battle. But if you like that sort of thing, or the very beginning of the game, it is quite fun. It was well done, but yeah, it's just power gaming towards the end, both of them.
Remember how graphically intense Neverwinter Nights was? The original,
yes.
Back when it was released in 2009. It was almost like Crisis-like when you were running around with the high-end card and getting 27 frames per second.
If you were lucky. And your jaw is just on the floor going, oh my God, this is... No, they don't have the hand-painted backgrounds of Baldur's Gate or Icewind Dale, but, oh wow, is this pretty.
They hammered machines.
My CPU and GPU back in those days were potatoes, so I tried to run. I couldn't even run Warcraft 3 with an acceptable frame rate, let alone Neverwinter Nights.
What was the one after Neverwinter Nights? That was the one maybe I was thinking.
2,
Neverwinter Nights 2?
Yeah, no, it was named something different. Gosh darn it. I can't remember. But anyway.
All right.
Neverwinter Days? No, which one? What? I don't know what you're talking about.
A different game. Maybe Oblivion. Oblivion came out after that, right? Elder Scrolls? No? Okay.
Yeah,
Brett.
no,
That's
Brett,
2010.
your pick. Oh, okay.
If you're as literary. I'm gonna say that word again.
If you're literary,
if you're literary, if you're as
you're Lydia
literate,
Lunch.
if you like them books,
if you're as literate as I am, see what I did there, and you enjoy the sci-fi genre, this book and series came out 40 years ago. It's hard to believe that it was this long ago, but this is William Gibson's Neuromancer, and which was a foundational epic story for the cyberspace, cyberpunk genre. It just built a world that seemed so accessible, the way that he was describing it and the way the characters interacted, and laid down some foundational concepts that have been built upon since that time. And we see visualized in so many games and movies and entertainment. There's no denying just how foundational and important this literary work was. See, I can do it.
How many times are you going to say foundational?
I don't know. I love it because it was. It's actually true. I really enjoyed the book, and as well as some of his other works. But there was this. They put out this celebratory tome to commemorate the 40th anniversary, and there was only going to be 500 copies of it, and I linked it, and you were just showing it a second ago, and they have sold out of them. They were $600 of kind of a cool, signed off by William Gibson, and had illustrations in it and some other accompanying pieces that went with it. It was very special. But if you've never read the book, the original, paperback or whatever is available at a much lower price. You can pick it up for like $10 or $12 on Amazon. Go read it.
When you were saying, somebody in the YouTube, I'm glad you brought up that Foundation's Asimov. Like, yes, if you're talking about something foundational, Isaac Asimov's Foundation trilogy, which may have inspired other famous trilogies that you may have heard of. So, anyway, it's just throwing that out there. We're talking about important sci-fi literature.
YouTube chat definitely echoes my thoughts on this. Is go read Neuromancer now. Go read it.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Brett. And Kent, do you have a pick this week?
I do. It was a last-minute pick, but it is a pick, and I think it's a good product. This is a 4 terabyte M.2 drive for basically 5 cents a gig. It was $204.99 just a little while ago.
It probably is Prime, because I'm not logged in. And
so on Prime, if you're a Prime member, it's $204.99. This is Silicon Power's highest performance Gen 4 chipset, the US75. It really does perform up there with your WD850s and your Samsung Evo Gen 4 drives. And at 4 terabytes for that price, I think it's a great deal.
Excellent. By the way, David in the YouTube chat has given me my pick of the week. I forgot about this. He said, nobody knows what TV static looks like now. Certainly not younger kids, or at least they've seen it simulated. My son just had a sleepover. One of his friends came over, and in my son's room, I have set him up with a little retro gaming station. So he has a 13-inch CRT TV, and his favorite console right now is a Sega Genesis, so he has one of those. And he was showing him Sonic on this TV, and his friend is looking at it, and he turns on the TV. He's like, is this even going to work? And then it turns on, and then he sees the static. He's like, is that real static? I've never seen real static before.
You heard all this, or you were standing there?
I was listening to the two of them from his room. Like, this is great.
So did you make them then watch Poltergeist?
No.
Yeah, really?
No.
They wouldn't even get it.
They watched.
They're here.
My wife was in charge. She was the den mother for this sleepover, so she was in charge of the movie and all that other stuff. But
so does this make your pick the original Sega?
I don't know. I don't know what my pick would be. I guess it would be my 13-inch Daewoo TV from 1989 with
Sega on a
wood grain
TV.
on the side.
Sega on a TV with one of those channel switchers. You got to tune it to channel 3.
It would, yeah. I don't have the composite. There's no composite on this TV. It's just a coax on the back. So it's got an RF modulator, which makes it look even
there you
worse.
Go.
Yes.
Yes, with RF modulator.
A Sega Gen 2 console with an RF modulator all day. Okay, I think that's going to do it for this rather short, but surprisingly cohesive and on-target podcast, which really doesn't need much in the way of any editing, and that's the way it should be, because I have to leave very early in the morning for a camping trip that my wife and our friends planned, leaving me literally no time to do my usual, day-long extravaganza. So we got to do a lot of work tonight.
The family-friendly outdoor activities look great there.
Mm-hmm. Sebastian,
tell us
whatever
all
you
about
do,
it when you come back.
Don't tell them that you finished it, and sit there with your head buried in the laptop, ignoring them, saying, "No, I am desperately trying to get this up. It was
still working."
Being outside, socializing. No, I'm not a huge fan of this plan. To be away from home, away from all my stuff for, I don't know, somewhere between 2 and 4 days. I haven't been told if there's a definite number yet. And there's some storms coming too, which is always very exciting when you're camping.
Beware, it could just be an intervention.
Yeah.
You never know.
When I get back, all of this hoarding.
They'll give you a foldable piece of wood with a keyboard marked on it in Sharpie.
Did you see the Scott Guzman comment from the YouTube chat where he suggests that you sit the two youngsters down in front of Hellraiser?
No, well, I already have a bad enough reputation, because the last time his friend came over for a sleepover, the two of them played Goat Simulator 3.
Oh, what's wrong with that?
I walked into the living room and they were gleefully taking people and throwing them into this cauldron and boiling them alive.
That's right. I forgot about the people eaters.
What are you guys doing? Like, oh, we're cooking these people. Like, okay, all right. And then his mom did the check-in phone call, and he's like, "Mom, we're throwing people in this cauldron and burning them." And she's like, "What?" Like, it's just a game, and it's not quite as bad as it sounds, but I'm making them turn it off now. Like,
fine.
Yeah. She said he's not allowed to play that game anymore.
Yeah.
No.
Well,
Sebastian is never coming out of the woods, by the way. It's a whole
I need to. They're saying rent an RV. I need just to have an RV. I've been talking to my wife about this.
You should.
Our friends have the RV lifestyle, and we just have a fairly spacious tent. We're just in a tent, and it didn't work out that well last year. And for some reason, my wife wants to do it again this year.
If it didn't work out the first time, why not try it again?
Oh, the last time the problem was that there were storms. She's like, "I'm never doing this again. Camping in the rain."
Oh,
got cold at night.
Aren't there storms on the way for you right now?
Oh. Again.
Huh.
Same friends, camping, storms predicted again. Like, all right.
Funny, my brother has the opposite problem. He had to buy a really fancy tent to try and convince his wife and daughter to come on another camping trip with him.
I guess it is good.
He's a chief scout, and I almost was. So.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for watching, listening, and we'll return next week with more.
Your scenario is how horror films start. By the way,
you assume you're going to survive this camping trip.
I can't wait to see the found footage.